This is Shōbōgenzō, and we're reading Bendowa. Paragraph 26. Now we have heard how high and great merit is the merit of Zazen. But some stupid person might doubtingly ask, there are many gates to the Buddha Dharma. Why do you solely recommend sitting in Zazen? I say, because it is the authentic gate to the Buddha Dharma. Someone asks, why do you see it as the only authentic gate? I say, the great master Shakyamuni exactly transmitted as the authentic tradition this subtle method of grasping the state of truth. And the Tathagatas of the 3 times all attained the truth through Zazen. Thus, the fact that Zazen is the authentic gate has been transmitted and received. Furthermore, the patriarchs of the western heavens and the eastern lands all attained the truth through Zazen. Therefore, I am now preaching Zazen to human beings and gods as the authentic gate. Someone asks, that which relies upon receiving the authentic transmission of the subtle method of the Tathagata, or upon following the traces of the ancestral masters, is surely beyond the intellect of the common man. Reading sutras and reciting the names of Buddhas, however, may naturally become the causes and conditions of enlightenment. But as for just idly sitting, without doing anything, how can that be the means of getting enlightenment? I say, if you now think that the samadhi of the Buddhas, the supreme and great Dharma, is idly sitting without doing anything, you are a person who insults the great vehicle. Such delusion is so deep that it is like being in the ocean and saying there is no water. In Zazen, we are already seated stably and thankfully in the Buddha's samadhi of receiving and using the self. Is this not the accomplishment of vast and great virtue? It is pitiful that your eyes are not yet open and your mind remains in a drunken stupor. In general, the state of the Buddhas is unthinkable. Intelligence cannot reach it. How much less could disbelief or inferior wisdom know the state? Only people of great makings and right belief can enter into it. For people of disbelief, even if taught, it is difficult to receive the teaching. Even on Vulture Peak, there were people about whom the Buddha said that they withdraw also is fine. As a general rule, when right belief emerges in our mind, we should do training and learn in practice. Otherwise, we should rest for a while. Regret the fact if you will, but from ancient times the Dharma has been dry. Further, do you know of yourself any virtue that is gained from practices such as reading sutras and reciting names of Buddhas? It is very unreliable to think that only to wag the tongue and raise the voice has the virtue of Buddha's work. When we compare such practices with the Buddha Dharma, they fade further and further into the distance. Moreover, we open sutras to clarify the criteria that the Buddha taught of instantaneous and gradual practice, and those who practice according to the teaching are invariably caused to attain the state of real experience. This is completely different from aspiring to the virtue of attainment of Bodhi by vainly exhausting the intellect. Trying to arrive at the Buddha's state of truth only through action of the mouth, stupidly chanting thousands or tens of thousands of times, is like hoping to reach the south country of Etsu by pointing a carriage towards the north. Or it is like trying to put a square peg into a round hole. Reading sentences while remaining ignorant of how to practice is like a student of medicine forgetting how to compound medications. What use is that? Those who chant endlessly are like frogs in a spring paddy field, croaking day and night. In the end, it is all useless. It is still more difficult for people who are deeply disturbed by fame and gain to abandon these things. The mind that craves gain is very deep, and so it must have been present in the ancient past. How could it not be present in the world today? It is most pitiful. Just remember, when a practitioner directly follows a master who has attained the truth and clarified the mind, and when the practitioner matches that mind and experiences and understands it, and thus receives the authentic transmission of the subtle Dharma of the 7 Buddhas, then the exact teaching appears clearly and is received and maintained. This is beyond the comprehension of Dharma teachers who study words. So stop this doubting and delusion and follow the teaching of a true master. Attain and experience the Buddha's samadhi of receiving and using the self by sitting in zazen and pursuing the truth. Someone asks, the flower of Dharma and the teaching of the Garland Sutra, which have now been transmitted into this country, are both ultimate expressions of the great vehicle. Moreover, in the case of the Shingon sect, the transition passed directly from the Tathagata Vairocana to Vajrasattva, and so the transmission from master to disciple is not at random. Quoting the principles which it discusses, that mind here and now is Buddha, and this mind becomes Buddha, the Shingon sect proclaims that we realize the right realization of the 5 Buddhas in one sitting without undergoing many kalpas of training. We can say that this is the ultimate refinement of the Buddha's Dharma. What is so excellent then about the practice which you solely recommend to the exclusion of these other practices? I say, remember, among Buddhists, we do not argue about superiority and inferiority of philosophies, or choose between shallowness and profundity in the Dharma. We need only know whether the practice is genuine or artificial. Some have entered into the stream of the Buddha's truth at the invitation of grass, flowers, mountains, and rivers. Some have received and maintained the stamp of Buddha by grasping soil, stones, sand, and pebbles. Furthermore, the vast and the great word is even more abundant than the myriad phenomena, and the turning of the great Dharma wheel is contained in every molecule. This being so, the words, mind here and now is Buddha, are only the moon in water, and the idea, just to sit is to become Buddha, is also a reflection in a mirror. We should not be caught by the skillfulness of the words. Now, in the recommending the practice in which Bodhi is directly experienced, I hope to demonstrate the subtle truth that the Buddhist patriarchs have transmitted one-to-one, and thus to make you into people of the real state of truth. Moreover, the transmission of the Buddha Dharma, for transmission of the Buddha Dharma, we must always take as a teacher a person who has experienced the Buddha's state. It is never enough to take as our guiding teacher a scholar who counts words. That would be like the blind leading the blind. In this, the lineage of the authentic transmission of the Buddhist patriarchs, we all revere wise masters who have attained the truth and experienced the state, and we cause them to dwell in and to maintain the Buddha Dharma. This is why, when Shintoists of the lineages of Yin and Yang come to devote themselves, and when arhats who have experienced the effect come to ask for Dharma, we give each of them, without fail, the means of clarifying the mental state. This is something that has never been heard of in other lineages. The disciples of the Buddha should just learn the Buddha Dharma. Furthermore, we should remember that from the beginning, we have never lacked the supreme state of Bodhi, and we will receive it and use it forever. At the same time, because we cannot perceive it directly, we are prone to beget random intellectual ideas. And because we chase after these as if they were real things, we vainly pass by the great state of truth. From these intellectual ideas emerge all sorts of flowers in space. We think about the 12-fold cycle and the 25 spheres of existence, and ideas of the 3 vehicles and the 5 vehicles, or of having Buddha nature and not having Buddha nature, are endless. We should not think that the learning of these intellectual ideas is the right path of Buddhist practice. When we solely sit in zazen, on the other hand, relying now on exactly the same posture as the Buddha and letting go of the myriad things, then we go beyond the areas of delusion, realization, emotion, and consideration, and we are not concerned with the ways of the common and the sacred. At once we are roaming outside the intellectual frame, receiving and using the great state of Bodhi. How could those caught in the trap of words compare with this? Someone asks, among the 3 kinds of training, there is training in the balanced state, and among the 6 paramitas, there is the dhyana paramita, both of which all bodhisattvas learn from the outset and all bodhisattvas practice, regardless of whether they are clever or stupid. The zazen that you are discussing now is surely only one of these. Why do you say that the Tathagata's right Dharma is concentrated in this practice of zazen? I say, the question arises because this right Dharma-eye treasury, the supreme and great method, which is the one great matter of the Tathagata, has been called the Zen sect. Remember that this title Zen sect was established in China and the East. It is not heard in India. When the great master Bodhidharma first stayed at Shaolin Temple in the Sungshan Mountains and faced the wall for 9 years, monks and laymen were still ignorant of the Buddha's right Dharma. So they called Master Bodhidharma a Brahmin who made a religion of Zazen. Thereafter, the patriarchs of successive generations all constantly devoted themselves to Zazen. Stupid secular people who saw this, not knowing the reality, talked at random of a Zazen sect. Nowadays, dropping the word Za, they talk of just the Zen sect. This interpretation is clear from records of the patriarchs. Zazen should not be discussed as the balanced state of dhyana in the 6 paramitas and the 3 kinds of training. That this Buddha Dharma is the legitimate intention of the one-to-one transmission has never been concealed through the ages. In the order on Vulture Peak in ancient times, when the Tathagata gave the Dharma to the Venerable Maya Kasyapa, transmitting the right Dharma-eye treasury and the fine mind of Nirvana, the simple and great method, only to him, the ceremony was witnessed directly by beings among the celestial throng, which are present in the world above, so it must never be doubted. It is the universal rule that these celestial beings will guard and maintain the Buddha Dharma eternally. Their efforts have never faded. Just remember that this transmission of Zazen is the whole truth of the Buddha's Dharma. Nothing can be compared with it. Someone asks, why in discussing entry into the state of experience do Buddhists recommend us to practice the balanced state of dhyana solely by sitting, which is only one of the 4 forms of conduct? I say, it is difficult to calculate all the ways that Buddhas have successively practiced since ancient times to enter the state of real experience. If we want to find a reason, we should remember that what Buddhists practice is reason in itself. We should not look for a reason beside this. But an ancestral master has praised sitting by saying, sitting in Zazen is the peaceful and joyful gate in Dharma. So in conclusion, the reason may be that of the 4 forms of conduct, sitting is the most peaceful and joyful. Furthermore, sitting is not the way practiced by 1 or 2 Buddhas. All the Buddhas and all the patriarchs possess this way. Someone asks, in regard to this practice of Zazen, a person who has not yet experienced and understood the Buddha Dharma may be able to acquire that experience by pursuing the truth in Zazen. But what can a person who has already clarified the Buddha's right Dharma expect to gain from Zazen? I say, we do not tell our dreams before a fool, and it is difficult to put oars into the hands of a mountaineer. Nevertheless, I must bestow the teaching. The thought that practice and experience are not one thing is just the idea of non-Buddhists. In the Buddha Dharma, practice and experience are completely the same. Practice now is also practice in the state of experience. Therefore, a beginner's pursuit of the truth is just the whole body of the original state of experience. This is why the Buddhist patriarchs teach in the practical cautions they have handed down to us not to expect any experience outside of practice. And the reason may be that practice itself is the directly accessible original state of experience. Because practice is just experience, the experience is endless. And because experience is practice, the practice has no beginning. This is how both the Tathagata Shakyamuni and the Venerable Patriarch Mayakassiyapa were received and used by the practice that exists in the state of experience. The great Master Bodhidharma and the founding Patriarch Daikan was similarly pulled and driven by the practice that exists in the state of experience. The examples of all those who dwelt in and maintained the Buddha Dharma are like this. The practice that is never separate from experience exists already. Having fortunately received the one-to-one transmission of a share of the subtle practice, we who are beginners in pursuing the truth directly possess, in the state without intention, a share of original experience. Remember, in order to prevent us from tainting the experience that is never separate from practice, the Buddhist patriarchs have repeatedly taught us not to be lax in practice. When we forget the subtle practice, original experience has filled our hands. When the body leaves original experience behind, the subtle practice is operating throughout the body. Moreover, as I saw with my own eyes in Great Sung, China, the Zen monasteries of many districts had all built zazen halls accommodating 500 or 600 or even 1,000 or 2,000 monks who were encouraged to sit in zazen day and night. The leader of one such order was a true master who had received the Buddha's mind seal. When I asked him the great intent of the Buddha Dharma, I was able to hear the principle that practice and experience are never two stages. Therefore, in accordance with the teaching of the Buddhist patriarchs and following the way of a true master, he encouraged everyone to pursue the truth in zazen. He encouraged not only the practitioners in his order, but all noble friends who sought the Dharma, all people who hope to find true reality in the Buddha Dharma without choosing between beginners and late learners, without distinction between common people and sacred people. Have you not heard the words of the ancestral master who said, "It is not that there is no practice and experience, but it cannot be tainted"? Another master said, "Someone who sees the way practices the way." Remember that even in the state of attainment of the truth, we should practice.